This is Trash Talk with your host, Garrett the Trash Man.
All right, what is up, everybody? John with the save, pushing the record button when I was just rolling. You're listening to Trash Talk. This is your host, Garrett the Trash Man, John the Batman Ballard, as usual.
I really should make a Facebook profile of that.
John the Batman Ballard.
I don't know what I would do with it, but
Just put on a Batman mask and read the news each evening
yeah.
in Batman voice.
Ooh, I don't know if I have a good Batman voice.
It could go big. Well, you're going to have to practice for it, buddy.
Yeah, practice makes perfect.
Practice? No, perfect practice makes perfect.
Yeah, we just gave Nux for those of you just listening.
Yeah, that's why you should go to YouTube so you can see us give Nux. You're really missing out.
You got some issues there?
Yeah, it's not sitting right on my ear. Feels funny. All right, dude. Well, I'm going to do my sponsor read right now. Larson Waste, world's best trash company. Getting after it is what we're doing here at Larson Waste. I mean, every day we hustle and do. Yep. So, Larson Waste, thank you for sponsoring this podcast. And, yeah, hit them up, larsonwaste.com. Larson Waste across any of the platforms. We're always putting out content and appreciate them sponsoring this podcast. Now, let's dive into some rants.
Ay, Capitan.
Ay, Capitan. So, dude, I'm going to rant about something that I feel like my rants are always just what's going on in my world.
Yep.
And so sometimes there'll be weeks of similar things because, like, sometimes tough stuff takes time. It's not just like, boom, a fix. And it kind of makes me think of, I've heard Gary Vee say it before. He's like, people say I say the same thing. He's like, yeah, because I'm saying the truth. Like, I just keep repeating it because it is what it is.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, there's some truth to that. So, when my rants are the same, know that I'm still just working on it. But I'm still working on the discipline of doing a thing right when it needs to be done. Because it's such an easy thing to slip away from that.
Rant. Keep going.
But
just kill it.
Man, life just clicks. Things happen for you if you'll just handle things right when they come up. Do not put them off. The simple things, like, oh, this box needs to go upstairs. Boom, take it upstairs. You're done with it. I realized in some work that I've got to get handled, I kept putting it off. Oh, I'll get to that tonight. And it just builds and builds until it's this huge thing. I'm like, if I just handle it, if I take, and I found that it's always so much less time than I think it's going to be, and generally is so much better that it's handled and it's off your mind. It's just handle things right when they come up. You get a text, don't leave it for later. Answer it. Whatever it is. And obviously, situation dictates if you're being intentional about being with a person, that text waits. But I mean, if you open it up and you're going to address it, handle it, solve it, be done with it. It's so much cleaner than living life with 500 things hanging out there. I envision it in my mind of like having 5,000 kites up in the sky and you're trying to keep them all flying, remember all of them. You got to go check on the strings and make sure they're not getting loose and going away and whatever. It's so much easier to just, handle what's at hand.
Yep.
So handle it.
Ooh, I like that.
That's what I got to rant about today, John.
Oodalolly.
Oodalolly.
That's awesome. I couldn't agree more. My rant today is, and you'll know what I'm talking about after I describe it, but, like, how do I want to go into this? So, like, I would just encourage everyone that's listening to this to just, like, open up a space in your mind that, like, the majority of things you do and the ways you think, like, could or could not be useful in, like, your life. And that, like, there is so much more out there that we're not aware of. And I guess the reason I say that is just, like, I've just had a realization that, like, in everything, like, yeah, we think, okay, this is the best way to do this.
Or the only way.
Or the only way
option
to do it. And so that's what we've done our whole lives. And, like, I've just realized, like, that's not the case. There's an infinite way to do things or ways to have a relationship with something or someone, and you can have it be whatever you want it to be. Like relationship with money, relationships in family, with friends, with people you work with, like, you know, it's just like, don't be closed off to the fact that your brain's going to tell you, oh yeah, I already know how to do all these things. Well, you know a way to do all those things, but like there's an infinite way to do them, and there's more than likely a lot more useful ways to do that. Like, don't think you just know it all already, in the sense of like things that are pretty simple in life.
Yeah, and if you can approach everything as if you have no idea, you're so much better off. Even if you end up doing it the same way, you're more confident in that way.
Yeah.
So.
And the reason I say that is just I was listening to a book this week, and it's a book I've listened to multiple times. But there was a chapter in it that just talked about how, like, hey, like, you can create whatever the heck you want when it comes to creating wealth. Like, everyone says, oh, you have to have money to make money. Having money to make money may make it a little bit easier or more effective or more efficient, but that's not true.
Yeah. Yeah, there's plenty of people that have done it without.
You can create money out of nothing. Like, you can have zero resources, and the only thing you have is your being, like your mind, and like you can create it.
Mm-hmm.
You can create wealth for yourself without having received some giant inheritance or something, like, you know. And I was just like, wow, like, we as human beings think we already have figured it all out, and then we just like stay in these ruts. And I was just like, whoa,
Yeah.
dude, if we can just open our minds and say like, hey, okay, you know, here's how I've done it, and that works, but there's more than likely a lot better way to do this, so let's be open to it and see if we can find that. And if not, great, we already know how to do it. So
it reminds me with my team, one thing I don't allow in our meetings is people to ever say we can't do something. I hate that whole mindset is just a non-starter. There's nowhere to go from there. It's like, oh, we can't, boom, that's final. You know, we don't say that in these meetings. Give me the options of what it would look like to do that. Don't already decide that we're not going to do that, because that's the end of it. If we at least look at the options of what it is to do that, if it's like, yeah, we can't handle any more trash through our transfer station. No, I don't. That's a non-starter. There's no exploration of something. It's like, well, what it would need to look like if we were to handle more trash is we would need to run a night shift of truckers or have some way to move more volume. You know, whatever. That's just an illustration. But that has a conversation and lets you actually explore ideas and things like that. So I think those are some indicators to kind of systemize what you're saying, to look for those things. When you find these hard, like, we can't type situations, look for those in your life and realize, hey, no, I can do anything. I can do whatever I want. Let's just decide if I want to or not.
yeah,
And so explore it, massaged out. Because, ideas just die right there.
Yeah.
I can't. Or
it
this
takes
is
away
how
all the
it's done.
possibilities.
Yeah, this is how we've always done it, and we can't do that. It's like, well, maybe we don't do it anymore how we've always done it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
And
we might have to find a completely different way of doing it.
and a lot of people that it seems like they're crazy innovators, really they just look at life that way. Like, hey, maybe there's a different way of doing it. I don't know. Let's explore it. Where most people are, oh yeah, that would never work. We can't even touch that because there's this one problem over there.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to quote a completely different book in The Traveler's Gift by Angie Andrews. One of the things he talks about is like, listen, like a lot of people that have changed history, he's like, God was waiting on someone that just said, hey, like, I don't believe what everyone else has done. I believe there's a different possibility. And they went out and did it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me of a situation we're in right now with a fuel tank. We operate around 50 vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, a fuel tank would make a lot of sense. It would have made a lot of sense at a quarter of the size we are now, pay for itself in a couple months with the fuel savings. And we're just getting around to getting one. because we operated as if it was true for years and years that there's so much insurance add-on, permitting, so much stuff we would have to do if we got a fuel tank that the cost savings wouldn't even be there. We operated completely as if that was true. Never even looked at a fuel tank, never even considered the cost savings, just operated as if that was true. Well, when we finally were like, what would it look like to have a fuel tank? We find out insurance doesn't care. There's no added insurance. There's no permitting needed. It literally is buy the tank, start saving money. And we've, at this point, we're probably in the millions of dollars that could have been saved at this point if we would have done this a decade ago. There's millions of dollars that would have been saved, but weren't because we were stuck in, we know how to do it, and we know the answers to these things. And, there's 100 things we're doing right now that are that exact same way. That there's millions of dollars of savings out there, or additional revenue, or whatever it is in your life, any situation. If you can approach everything like there's something you're missing.
Yeah.
You got a chance to be open to those things.
It's so true. Like every aspect of life, you can look at it in that way.
Yeah, buddy.
Love it.
John, that was a great rant. Great topic.
Oh, gee, shucks,
you could basically call that a podcast, but we're not going to.
No.
So, this podcast, as I thought of different topics, I thought this is probably a really important one that maybe for me and you, we don't. It's kind of second nature. But I've been meeting with some other business owners lately, and I'm realizing that there's a lot of people out there that even have been in business for a long time that, that's like a big question mark, hands-off situation. What I'm talking about is the finances of a company, or financial literacy as it refers to a company.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought it'd be worthwhile to kind of discuss how you and I came about of understanding that when we started business and how we've progressed through it, and then share just some of the tips or things that we look at, because one thing that I think it's overcomplicated in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I know what got me when I first stepped into business and was working to wrap my head around everything. It's like every single thing has like multiple names.
Mm-hmm.
For example, a profit and loss statement. You'll hear someone call it a profit and loss statement. You hear someone call it an income statement. You hear someone call it a P&L. And you may not connect that stands for profit and loss. And then you've got the balance sheet that goes with that. And everything just has so many. And then you talk about, even when you just say income. Are you talking your revenue? Are you talking your gross profit? Your net profit? Then you start saying EBITDA and different things like that. My eyes were glazing over and was like, how do I just tell if we're making money? And I've met with business owners that are running over $1 million businesses, and I go, well, what's your revenue? And they go, what do you mean revenue? Your revenue, man.
Yeah.
What do you make? And depending on the number, it's like, okay, I can determine maybe off what you just said if that's your profit or your revenue. So yeah. Anyway, I get there's a lot out there. So, John, I want to know, did your parents sit you down when you were a little kid because you grew up in a family of business owners and teach you what a balance sheet is, how to read it, a profit and loss statement, those type of things? Or how did you get started, and was it pre or post starting your business that you felt like you started getting a grasp on it?
Most definitely post.
Nice.
I knew nothing, and I know it would be more useful if I was even more financially literate. Mm-hmm. And that is one of the things that is on my radar that I would like to learn more about. Obviously the basics I understand, mm-hmm. but there's more things that I'd like to get into and understand. But yeah, no, dude, I started a business and figured, doesn't do me any good to be financially literate if I'm not bringing in any revenue. If I'm not bringing in any money, so I got to first figure out how to get the money in, and then I'll figure out what to do with it. You know, I didn't want to put the the carriage in front of the horse in that instance. But yeah, no, I definitely had to learn it as I went along, and I've actually learned. I'd say a large portion of what I have learned, I've actually learned from one of my brothers that has his MBA.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, a lot of it's just talking to him.
Yeah.
Just listening to like all the big major finance stuff that he works with on a daily basis.
Which, something to that, like neither of us have gone to college.
No.
And I've actually worked with people that have business degrees and, excuse me, that have business degrees, but still can't read a financial statement. What did they teach you? This should have been the first class in like
Day one.
Yeah, like it has to be part of everything through. And I think that's one thing I want to talk a little bit about is how I hold the numbers, because I think a lot of people not in business act like that is business. And in my experience, it's not. Like there's accountants and nerds that just go crazy with those numbers, and if that's all business was, all the nerds would be the all accountants would just be the business owners. They wouldn't be accountants over here, because there's accountants too that like struggle to have their accountant firm work, and they know numbers left, right, up and down, sideways, everywhere. But like you said, if you don't have it coming in, like there's a lot more factors to a business. But I do believe that that's a key pillar. That if you're going to go into business and be in business, you need to have a competency level with financials, or else you're doing nothing but crossing your fingers, hoping for the best, licking your finger, sticking it up in the wind, seeing what happens.
Yeah.
And so I just think that's important to kind of, I would say it's not the only thing that matters, but if we're looking at, I would say there's probably, there may be more than this, but I'll throw it out there like this. There's probably 3 pillars of business that I would see it all stands on. I look at like a 3-legged stool where you've got your finances. You've got to know those, be on top of those. You've got sales, which would include marketing and those things. And then you've got operations.
Yeah.
And more than likely, you're going to be really talented in one, maybe 2 of those. And the other one you're really going to have to work on and just work to have a certain level of
competency.
Exactly. But you can't just leave it totally out to its own, even if you're partnering with people.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good idea. If, in my case, I think I'm highly competent and pretty naturally talented in sales and operations, and finances has been it's work. It's the not super fun part to me.
I would agree with you very much. So finances is the thing where I'm like, all right, let's do this. Make sure we're doing what we're doing,
and it can be more exciting too, because that's the way you're able to kind of set your goals and know if you're doing well.
Yeah,
so there can be exciting parts about it, but because it can be interpreted so many different ways. I mean, I've sat down with meetings with my accountant where I'm looking at going, we've had the best year, top line and bottom line. Our balance sheet, we're trending in the right direction, where our assets are outpacing our liabilities, and I see just, hey, yeah, we're looking really good. And I sit down with my accountant, and it's doom and gloom. You're going to have to shut your doors next week. You know,
Yeah.
So it really is up to interpretation. You've got to be able to take different opinions and different things like that. And that's why I say, even if you partner with someone that's got an MBA and knows the finances up and down, you've got to be able to communicate with them and understand, like, hey, are we seeing this the same? Because, the decisions that are made have to take all that into account, plus the emotion.
Yeah. Well, and I would say that, like, my experience of finances and your experience of finances vary widely, mostly due to, you run a very large and very, I don't know about complicated, but very intricate business. Like, there's a lot of moving parts in the trash industry.
Yeah, and that is something that, as I've had people work with me, they're like, this is one of the most complicated businesses we've seen.
Yeah.
Because there's just a lot of factors.
Yeah. Whereas, home care, we've got our office expenses, and payroll.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it.
Yeah. So
Like,
makes it a little bit.
like
Well,
it's pretty cut and dry, you know.
and I know lots of times that's why me and my accountant see things different, because he's over here running a business and he's going, why do you have this debt over here and why does this cost so much and you need to plan for this? And I'm like, dude, you've got some computers and you probably don't even have a mortgage on this office building yet. You got that in payroll. Like, there's nothing else.
Yeah.
And with ours, there's just a lot. I do describe it as complicated, and at times it even feels complex. Because I'm like, I don't know if there is a fixed number of variables.
Yeah.
It seems at times that it's complex and that there's an infinite number of variables. However, though, I was exposed to numbers just growing up in the business, and my grandpa being a business owner, my dad, not much. Like, it would be like, oh, yeah, this is a profit and loss. And I'd be like, okay. And I'd kind of look at it and be like, all right. Yeah, if it was color-coded, that was a little bit better. Be like, oh, green's good? Okay.
Yeah.
But when I took over the operations of the company, what I did was I went online and I ordered a Accounting 101 book.
Mm-hmm.
Like what you'd get at college. And every night I'd sit down and I'd go through the chapter and then answer the questions in the back, just like college would do. And that's one of my realizations of how much I think useless college is. Because if I did that at a college, that would be like a $10,000 thing.
Yeah.
And I bought a $30 book off of eBay and went through it. And now I've realized too, Skillshare. I've leaned on Skillshare a lot as I've progressed and learned more, because they've got from very, very basic to highly complex and integral things where you're talking public companies and different things like that you can learn. And so I guess what I'm getting at with this, like that's all I did to get started with that, was one, being exposed a little bit and just looking at them, and then getting some sort of resource to help me start teaching myself about them, and then talking with people, whether it was my accountant and other business owners, saying, hey, can you teach me a little bit more of this? I'm trying to understand these things a little bit more.
It's funny you say that, because thinking about like financial literacy and financials, I also think, like, obviously there's the core things, but each industry has its own specific set of different things in finances.
Mm-hmm.
And like, for example, you know, if I were to look at some of your reports from Larson Waste, I'd be like, I don't know. Yeah, I'm lost.
Yeah.
Wandering around out in the darkness. But you asked me to go look at a house that needs to be bought, flipped, and sold. Okay, let's sit down and talk. You're like, okay, I can sit down and in 10 minutes have a full-blown budget and tell you what needs to be replaced, and be pretty dang close to like, okay, yeah, this is what you're going to be into it,
Mm-hmm.
So it's very specific. There's industry specifics, but then there's also, like just basic financials of anything.
You want to make more money than you spend.
Yep.
Like, because end of the day, it really is that simple. You've got your top line, that's your revenue. You've got your cost of goods sold.
Yep.
And then you've got your expenses, and then you've got your bottom line profit.
Yeah.
Now, the one thing that they do throw in that I still cannot wrap my head around is if you are carrying debt, that bottom line does not take into account any payments you've made on debt. So you may make, and I don't even know why I'm going down in this quick little class. Anybody ever heard of phantom income? You will if you get into business. So you may look at your profit and loss and go, wow, yeah, we made $100,000 this year. Pats on the back. But you're paying $12,000 a month in a loan you got because you have a delivery pickup because you deliver milk. You're the milkman. And you would actually cash, you would have lost, say $20,000.
Yep.
But you're still going to be taxed as if you made $100,000. You just won't have the cash there. And that simple thing, phantom income, takes probably 85% of businesses down that go down. And people are totally unaware of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's, if I was to guess, I have no idea, but if I was to guess, that's why 90% of businesses fell within the first 5 years.
Yeah.
I would guess 80% of those 90 businesses fell because
Of that.
they have no idea what phantom income is and how to manage and look out for it.
Yeah.
They go, oh, yeah, I can afford that payment and we'll make more than that payment. This all lines out. Makes total sense. Get it done. First tax season comes around. They get walloped, and then all of a sudden they're limping along. And then another tax season comes around. They get walloped again, and they're out before year 3 rolls around.
Well, and it's funny because you'll hear people be like, well, how do you grow a business? And I'm like, well, you bring more money in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they're like, well, what about this, this, and this? I'm like, well, yeah, those are going to make you more efficient. And, if you're not being very efficient and you want to increase your profitability, great, awesome. But, like, I hear people ask, well, how do you grow a business? I'm like, you bring more money in, like, it's...
Well, that's why I view, like, what you said, I would say is dead on. Like, revenue is the lifeblood.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to manage it correctly once you get it and take into account all the factors and plan for the future and that. But that's why the old saying of, like, if you're not growing, you're dying is so true in business. There's no way to just be like, yep, we're good and steady. I don't care what industry you're in. You're just going to float along. It's not going to happen. And, yeah, that revenue is just like that's oxygen. And once you run out of oxygen, like, you don't last very long. But as long as you're getting oxygen, like, you've still got a fighting chance to figure stuff out. And and I think just that illustration, like, is a good illustration of why it's so important to have some sort of competency.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you'll get everything will appear as if it's going great. You can feel like it's going great. You're bringing in all this money, and it can even be showing up on the bottom line. You may even have some cash in your pocket, and you're like, yeah, things are great. But if you don't have the literacy, there's so many things that can be happening. They're going to add up real quick and then wallop you that you've just got to be able to have the comment. And that's why, for me, I have multiple people that look at my books too. Because I'm kind of going back to your rant. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And you've got to be covering your basis if it's something as important in business, especially if you're at a point where you're responsible for other people's livelihoods too.
Yeah.
That's a responsibility that I don't think people that have never had it recognize.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. When people ask us to do things that we typically wouldn't do, and they're like, well, why won't you do that? And I says, well, because that puts, like we could end up getting in big trouble for that. He says, well, it's not that big of a deal. And I says, you don't understand. I'm not just feeding me and my family. I now have 20, 21, 22, I don't know what we're at right now, other families to provide for now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're not catching that, bud. Like, it's not just me. It's everyone that works for me, because guess what? If the company goes under, they gotta figure out how to feed their families now.
Yeah. Yeah, and hopefully they can.
Yeah.
And you never know where it's going to change when these jobs aren't coming back. And I think we're kind of touching into a topic that is a podcast worth looking at, because it's the last 5 or so years understanding why decision makers, executives, managers make so much more than the person actually doing the thing.
Yep.
Is not addressed enough, I think, in public forums.
Yeah.
The crap you're hearing now of, like, you didn't build that. Well, that was like, probably like 8 years ago that Obama first came out with that. Like, you didn't build that, talking about executives. And it's like, man, you're missing a whole picture of any day of the week. I can guarantee it's a lot easier to just go do any given task, whatever, whether it's garbage man, home care, or freaking shit shoveler.
Yeah.
You sleep a lot easier if you don't have to make the decisions.
Oh,
with
absolutely.
The things. And I'm not complaining about it, but it's just something that's not recognized.
Yeah.
And Yeah, to kind of bring it back to what we were talking about and wrap it up, I'd just say get financially literate, and especially now, there's no excuse not to be.
Yeah.
YouTube, Skillshare, talking to someone. Like, it's so easy to hop on something, and then when you can, build systems around it. If that's not your strong point,
Get someone else to do it.
exactly. But you better still be patient about it. So,
Couldn't agree more.
all right. Well, appreciate you guys listening. We will talk to you next episode. Peace.